Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe and have your post notifications turned on. Before I start, give this video a big like. So this is going to be a birth stories video. I will be sharing my birth experiences and kind of what I've learned. I'm drinking some mint tea. So let's get started. So crazy thing is, both of my kids were actually born at 38 weeks and 3 days, unplanned, and they were both unplanned C-sections. So starting with Austin, it was a regular day. I was actually going to my 38-week appointment, and I had so many plans. I was like, I'm gonna go to my appointment, come home and make some soup. I had all my ingredients set out. I was ready to go. I already had my hospital bag packed, which was good. I went to my appointment. I got there. They did the regular, routine things that they do at every single doctor's appointment. They checked my weight and my height, did a urine sample, all that stuff. And then the nurse brought me into the doctor's room. She took my blood pressure, and then she's like, oh, your blood pressure is kind of high. And so she's like, let me recheck it just to be sure. So she rechecked it, and it was still high. I believe it was like 154/90 or something like that. I don't know, something along those lines. And so she's like, let me get the doctor in here. Normally, you know this if you've had a baby. Or usually, I guess, for any doctor appointment, you know that between when the nurse checks you in to when the doctor actually comes in and talks to you, it can take up to like 15-20 minutes. But not this time. This time, the doctor came in right away, and as soon as the nurse left to go get the doctor, I was like, what is going on? Am I okay? Is the baby okay? First of all, I had a healthy pregnancy, so I was not expecting, anything to be wrong with the baby. He was growing normally, everything was completely fine. My pregnancy was amazing with him. I, wasn't throwing up, did not experience any crazy symptoms, maybe nausea here and there, but like nothing too crazy. So the doctor comes in, and she kind of has this look on her face, but like this different look, and I knew something was wrong or off. But she kept, playing along. She was like looking at me, and she was smiling, and she was like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? This and that. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, just get to the point, just get to the point. And so she's like, so you have preeclampsia, which is pretty much high blood pressure at the end of a pregnancy. And she said, we don't know why some women get it, but not others. It can happen, whether you have a healthy pregnancy or whether you don't. We just don't know why it happens. But the first symptoms are usually protein in your urine and high blood pressure, which is what I had. So she's like, what is gonna happen is you are gonna be going to the hospital right now to have your baby. I was just staring at her, and in my mind I'm like, no way, like I can't have a baby today. Like obviously you prep for 9 months and this and that, but I was not mentally prepared for a baby. I'm like, this is crazy, like this is crazy. She's like, so what's gonna happen is you're gonna go to the hospital, they're gonna induce you, and hopefully you'll have your baby today. And so I asked her, I was like, so I will not be, having a C-section. I will be delivering naturally. She said, yes, you will be delivering naturally, which was my whole plan. She said, yes, you will be delivering naturally, and that was my whole plan in the first place. So she's like, is there anyone that can take you to the hospital? And thank God, Artem was, he was still not doing trucking. He was working at his shop. And so I'm walking out of the doctor's office, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how do I tell him that we have to go to the hospital to have a baby? And so he didn't believe me. He's like, wait, you're joking. And I'm like, no, we have to go right now and have the baby. So she's like, the hospital knows that you are going to be arriving, so just go home, grab whatever you need. We get home, we grab the hospital bag and some, other things. And then we head to the hospital. On the way there, we stopped by to get some food because I'm like, I don't know when, I'll be able to eat next. So we got some food, we get to the hospital. It took us probably like 20 to 30 minutes to actually get into our room. And so the first thing they did was they were putting me on meds to help lower my blood pressure, because she said if the blood pressure doesn't get lower in a few hours, then they're going to give you a really strong dose, which is to prevent seizures. Sometimes it can happen during a pregnancy, and if you have really, really high blood pressure. And so we got to the hospital. I got into my hospital gown. They gave me the meds. We got to the hospital around 3 p.m. By the time it was like 8 to 9 p.m., I already started feeling the drugs, and so my blood pressure did not go down, and so eventually they started giving me a bigger dose, and I think that very same evening they started putting me on Pitocin to help induce my labor. Fast forward to the next day, still no baby. By like the middle of the day, I was so drugged and out of it. I remember talking to Artem and I could not keep my eyes open because that's how bad it was. At that point, I had Pitocin, magnesium, like the blood pressure meds, pretty much a million things. So finally, I started feeling contractions. When I was having my contractions, my belly was not tightening at the top. It was tightening at the very, very bottom, kind of where my pelvis is. And it would just get super, super tight and then would release just like a contraction. It was bad. Everyone always told me, they're like, make sure you get the epidural on time because if you wait too long, then, you know, if it's too late, they're not going to give you the epidural. I was holding off as long as I could. You know, maybe I don't need the epidural, but at one point my contractions got so unbearable that I was like, okay, I need the epidural. So they gave me the epidural. So I was not dilating whatsoever. I don't know. I was just not dilating. And so they're like, since you're not dilating, then we are going to break your water for you. So they broke my water. And then eventually I got close to 10 centimeters. And so they brought me into the delivery room to push the baby. I was pushing for about 4 hours. I was on my back and then they laid me to one side and then the other side. It was just not working out. I was so physically tired of pushing that I was like giving up. I was giving up. 4 hours later, there was a midwife, a different midwife. So I had 2 midwives and then 1 student with me the whole time and Artem. And they're like, your baby is not going underneath the pelvic bone. The baby's head is just not going underneath. So we are going to have to perform a C-section. And when they said that, believe it or not, I was bummed. I was so bummed. I was like, no, like, I know I can do this. Like, I know I can try. Like, in my head, I was definitely not saying that out loud. At that point, I was like, I'm so physically tired that I don't even care if I have a C-section. And I kind of looked at Artem and we kind of like agreed that, okay, we'll have a C-section. And then they brought me into the delivery room to have a C-section. They gave me extra numbing meds and they started the C-section. I think the total was about 30 to 40 minutes. Austin's C-section is very hard for me to remember because I was so drugged, but the only thing that stood out to me during the whole surgery was when they took the baby out and they only showed me his face for like 5 seconds. And then they had to take him to, you know, measure him and weigh him and all that stuff. So Artem cut the umbilical cord and all I remember saying is, does the baby have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 10 fingers, 10 toes? Like, I was just making sure that he was okay. And Artem's like, he's fine, he's perfect, he's so cute, like he's totally okay, he's healthy. I was just like ready to sleep after that. But yeah, and then they wheeled me back to the room. I was kind of wearing off the meds a little bit. I was super, super swollen after having him. Just the meds, like my face was so puffy, like my hands were puffy, my feet were puffy, everything. And I remember at one point, Artem is sound asleep. And Austin, because your milk doesn't come in, you know, your breast milk does not come in for the first couple of days. And so I was just having colostrum. I didn't have any milk. I was trying to pump. And at one point, I was so numb from the C-section still. Like, this was probably like 10 hours later. Artem is sound asleep. Austin is starting to cry. And I cannot reach his little like bassinet thing because it's like on wheels and you can just wheel the baby to you. I can't even get up because I'm numb. Like, I just can't feel anything below like right here. I cannot feel anything. And I'm calling the nurse. The nurse is not coming. Artem is sleeping. I cannot wake him up. Like, I'm not going to be yelling right now. And so finally a nurse came and I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you, Lord, that you sent a nurse. She helped me. And then pretty much after that, I was just working on breastfeeding. I had a lactation consultant come and unfortunately breastfeeding did not work out for me. It was just super, super painful. And I was trying for about 2 to 3 weeks before I just put him on a bottle. And they sent us home pretty much like 2 days after the surgery, just because they had to monitor my blood pressure and they had to make sure my blood pressure was low enough for them to discharge me home. They discharged me home with a bunch of blood pressure medication. Yeah, my overall birth experience with him was not too bad. The recovery was definitely a process. I mean, it took like a total of like a month to recover. So moving on to Isla. Isla was definitely a little bit different experience, but not at the same time. It was Thanksgiving Day. We weren't planning on going to our family gathering just because we kind of had sick kids before, a few days before, and we were kind of unsure if we were gonna go. And 12:30 rolls around. I think our family party was like at 4 or 5, I'm not sure, but 12:30 rolls around, and I start like having this stomach pain, like very low. And I kind of brushed off. I did not think whatsoever that it could be a contraction because I've never, had natural contractions before that just started on their own. About 30 minutes later, I start feeling that same pain. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like maybe it's something I ate. I don't know. Another 10-15 minutes goes by and I feel it again. I'm like, hold up. This can't be contractions right now. I'm like, nah, I don't think they're contractions. Fast forward to like 4 or 5 p.m. I'm walking around the house. I'm trying to do stuff. And I know they're contractions because they were coming like 3 to 5 minutes apart and they were painful. And I'm like, okay, these have to be contractions. Like they're not Braxton Hicks for sure. And so I had the timer on my phone to time my contractions and I was timing them and they were like 3 to 5 minutes apart and they were lasting for about like a minute. They were pretty decent contractions. And so I talked to Arden. I was like, what do I do? Do I call it, like, do we go to the hospital to get checked out? I wasn't sure what to do. I'm like, I'm 38 weeks. I'm having contractions for this amount of time, this often. And so she's like, let's just have you get checked out. If anything, we can always send you home. And that was my worst fear. I was like, I really hope that, we don't make the trip out there and then just have to get sent home. But so we call my parents come. So I was really sure that we were going to be sent home. We get to the hospital. They gave us a room right away because they knew we were coming, and they hook up the contraction monitor. They noticed that the baby's heart rate would drop every single time I had a contraction, which means that the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby somehow. Their exact words were, we're not sure how the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby, but most likely it's around the shoulder or around the neck. And we don't want to risk anything happening to you or the baby, so we're just gonna have to do a C-section. So quick. Like, I got to the hospital around 7 p.m. and then they started giving me all the meds before my C-section. Then we got into the operating room. They gave me my spinal, and I was way more awake during this surgery, which was super nice. But I do have to mention one thing. So when you're getting a C-section, usually they give you like a pillow of some sort, and I asked for like 2 pillows just to be more comfortable. And so when I was, getting my surgery done, it was about 30 to 40 minutes also. And I'm laying and my neck was just so stiff because I was looking in one direction. And you have, the surgeons working on you, and then Artem was on my left side, and then I had a doctor on my right side just to make sure that everything's good with me. And so I turned to Artem and I was like, oh, my neck hurts. But I didn't mean like actual pain. Like I just meant like, oh, it's just stiff. Like it hurts because I'm looking in one position and my neck just feels uncomfortable. So the doctor next to me asked me, he's like, do you want me to give you something for the pain? And I was like, oh no, I'm fine. I don't need anything. Next thing you know, like 5 minutes later, I start feeling so loopy, so out of it. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on with my head? I'm like, I was not feeling like this 5 minutes ago. Turns out he gave me fentanyl. He's like, oh yeah, I gave you some fentanyl for the pain. And I'm like, well, I didn't need any fentanyl for the pain. And anyways, pretty much they gave me drugs that took so long for me to wear off from. The whole night, I could not lift my head up. Every time I would lift my head up, my head just felt so lightheaded, just super out of it. So I had to just lay down. So they took Isla out. She was completely healthy. They weighed her, measured her. She was a small baby. She was 5 pounds, 13 ounces. Austin was 6 pounds and 10 ounces, so he was bigger. He was born at 11:10 p.m. She was born at 9:30 p.m. So pretty much we got to the hospital and 2 hours later we already had her. It was super quick. She was healthy. Breastfeeding also did not work out with her because it was painful. It was just hard. Let me just say that. It was just really hard. With her, we got discharged pretty early. Well, we spent like a full day at the hospital, 24 hours, and then we were already home. So yes, both C-sections went well. There was no complications, everything was fine. I did recover faster with Isla than I did with Austin. It took me like probably a total of 6 or 7 weeks to completely stop bleeding after my C-section. So now I kind of wanted to talk about a question. I didn't really get specific questions, but I did get one question that kind of wanted me to go through hospitalization, midwives, preparing for birth, all that stuff. So my tips for preparing for birth would be to make sure your hospital bag is packed before like 38 weeks. One big tip for preparing for birth also is to make sure you have all your birthing materials. Whether you're delivering naturally or a C-section, you don't know, how your birth is going to turn out. So just have all the postpartum stuff ready. Anything postpartum, you can go online and there's many different kinds of postpartum lists. Really helped me was doing a lot of research for postpartum care. And in my case, I did not deliver naturally, but if you are, there are so many lists online that will help you for certain things you need for postpartum. And another big tip is do not overpack for the hospital. Please do not overpack. I feel like with Austin, I packed more than with Isla because I already kind of knew the protocol and everything. But literally for Isla, I had a going home outfit for myself, a robe for when I did stay in the hospital, nursing bras, a going home outfit for the baby, and like 2 or 3 extra outfits for the baby in the hospital. And that is pretty much it. You do not need too much. And do not bring diapers or wipes for the baby. The hospital provides all that stuff for you. So if you don't have a bottle or baby wipes or diapers, pacifiers, whatever, the hospital will definitely have everything for you. So you do not have to worry about that. So I was definitely not thinking about having a midwife for my first child because everything was all new to me, and I had him in 2019, so that was a while ago, and everything is just so much more different now. And I feel like a lot of people are tending to have their babies with midwives now, or like at a birthing center versus at a hospital. And let me just tell you, if you are considering a midwife, please do your research on midwives. And also, you are so awesome for considering even to birth with a midwife because you are doing everything natural. So props to every single person that delivers naturally. I had epidural with both kids, so you are a superhero if you do deliver naturally. Another tip I would say for kind of postpartum, do not let anyone tell you how to feed your baby or what your baby needs. Only you know what your baby needs. I'm not trying to say this in a rude way, but only you know what your baby needs. Do not let anyone pressure you into breastfeeding or bottle feeding or just, asking you, oh, why aren't you breastfeeding? Or why aren't you bottle feeding? Only you know what is best for you and your baby. So when I, had breastfeeding that just did not work out for me, I had family that was super supportive. And for me, it was just so much easier with the bottle just because I knew how much milk they were both getting. Move the camera to a little different angle because it died. But anyways, I was saying, pretty much I knew how much milk they were both getting, and you know that the baby is benefiting from it because you know how much milk they're drinking. Versus when you're, trying to breastfeed and it's not working out, the baby is crying because they are, he or she is hungry, you're frustrated. It's not working out for you because the baby is not getting any milk, and it's frustrating. It's super frustrating. And I wanted to breastfeed so bad, both of my kids, but it's okay. It didn't work out. Bottles work better for me, but I think breastfeeding is amazing if you do decide to do it. And if it does work out for you, that's awesome. But I think that's it. I wanted to mention one more thing before I end the video. So, or kind of another tip, do not let your doctor pressure you into C-sections. So, in my case, I had a doctor who specialized in C-sections, so her job is obviously to push for C-sections. So with Austin, that's kind of what the doctor was doing. She would always bring up the C-section, and I would constantly remind her that I want a natural birth. And so I would definitely recommend to do a lot of research on doctors before I loved my clinic. I went to Valley Women's Healthcare in Auburn, and I loved the clinic. The doctor is also a very good doctor, but I would not probably go back to her just because of kind of how she pushed more for C-sections. But yeah, research is so important for doctors. So pretty much if you are trying to deliver naturally, try your hardest to make sure that you get what you want, because the doctors are just going to push for whatever is going to help them make more money pretty much. So you do what you want and what you are striving for. But yes, my hospital birth experiences were not bad. It honestly, it just depends on your preference, like, you know, what you want to do. There's home births, there's midwifing centers, there is hospitals. So it kind of just depends on what you're going for. If you want to do all natural, then, you know, a midwife might be for you. Or if you want that epidural, then obviously the hospital is probably a better choice for you. I don't know if I will be considering midwife in the future, but because everyone that I've talked to that has had a baby with a midwife before always talks good things and that their experiences were awesome and they're home within, you know, 3-4 hours versus a day or two. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions for me, or certain comments, please leave them down below. Give this video a big like, comment, and share, and I'll see you guys next time.